Just observe.
We've got streaming up on Facebook. So if you're joining us on Facebook, welcome. We're so happy to have you today. If you're joining us on Zoom, welcome. We will get started promptly at 12:15, so in about one more minute. In the meantime, feel free to jump in the chat box on Zoom or in the comments on Facebook and say hello to us and let us know where you're from. Welcome, Sanwana from Dallas. We're so glad to have you join us today. Molly, so glad you could join us. Molly's from El Paso. Got Alex from Midland. Sonia from Edinburgh. Welcome. We're so glad to have you join us today. All right. I have got 12:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So once again, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for our webinar today on early childhood intervention and the transition to special education. We're so happy to have you join us on Facebook and on Zoom. So my name is Stephanie McLaughlin. I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for Partners Resource Network. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of Parent Training and Information Centers, or PTIs. PTIs are funded through the Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. In Texas, there are 4 PTI projects known as PACT, PACT, and TEAM. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. And also joining us today for Partners Resource Network is our support specialist, Chelsea Rivas, and our technology specialist, Zach Hidalgo. If you're having any technical difficulties, please reach out to Zach in the chat box, and he will assist you with that. And for those of you that are needing a certificate of attendance, you will be receiving an email to thank you for joining today's webinar. If you'll follow the link in that webinar, in that email, you can get your certificate of attendance. We're also going to have a question and answer time at the end of the presentation. So if you're joining us on Zoom, please put your questions in the Q&A box. And if you're joining us on Facebook today, please type your questions in the comments and we'll be sure and get those. We are recording today's webinar and the recording will be available on our Facebook page and on our website at prntexas.org. All right, so to introduce our speaker and turn it over to our speaker so she has plenty of time to share all of her information with you. So our speaker today is Melinda L. Cruz. Melinda has been an education advocate with Disability Rights Texas for the last 3.5 years. She graduated from UTPA in 2014 with a degree in education and a minor in special education. She was a prior educator in the Rio Grande Valley area, having taught 4th grade and 2nd grade. So Melinda, welcome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you share yours. All right, you should be able to share, and I'm going to turn it over to you now. Welcome, Melinda.
Welcome. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great today. I hope I can share this properly. It's been a while that I have presented. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. And can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, everything
Great.
looks perfect.
So it has been a while that I have presented live. I have been in and out of ARDS all year long, and prior to that was COVID, but I hope you all enjoy our presentation today. My name again is Melinda de Cruz. I'm an education advocate here in the Rio Grande Valley. I cover the whole area from Roma all the way to Brownsville, a little bit of Corpus, but our agency covers the entire state of Texas. And so we have education advocates throughout the state of Texas. Locally, we have a senior attorney, Rosa Torres, Mr. Roy Ballesteros, education advocate, along with myself. We are the education team here in the RGV, but we also have other teams available. I will go over that later. For now, we'll get started with our early childhood intervention and transition to special education. We will have questions and answers at the end of the presentation, or you can also type them in the chat box in case you feel like you'll forget them. My presentation goals today are early childhood intervention, transition from ECI to special education, and general knowledge of special education. A little bit of the laws. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. In 1975, Congress passed a law, 94-142, now called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, to ensure that all students with disabilities receive a free, appropriate public education, also known as FATE for those of you in those ARD meetings. The purpose of IDEA is to prepare students for further education, employment, and independent living. With regards to IDEA, Disability Rights Texas does have an IDEA manual. It is not IDEA charter, but it is IDEA, the laws and policies that protect your child with a disability in the ECI, early childhood, and also the school settings. If any of you would like those, you can feel free to visit our website or let us know in the chat and we will mail those out to you. We have them in English and in Spanish, and I use those in my ARDs on a daily with every one of my cases. It keeps me on check, it keeps me on point, and if I forget something, I have my little notes right there. ECI overview. ECI services help promote the developmental and growth of infants and toddlers with developmental delays and or disabilities. We all know that intervention is always best, the sooner the better. The government enacted ECI for several reasons: to reduce future costs by minimizing the need for special education services, to maximize the potential for people with disabilities to live independently in society, and to enhance the capacity of families to meet the needs of their children. ECI, the research provides that the earlier a child receives ECI services, the better they will grow developmentally. Examples of services: a child with speech delay will benefit from speech therapy. A child with cerebral palsy will benefit from a more comprehensive set of services like physical or occupational therapies, assistive technology, nursing services. And for a lot of our parents that have individuals with behavior concerns, this is something else that we can provide. There is a behavior intervention plan, functional behavior assessments that can also be conducted in an ECI setting so that we could be able to provide those behavior supports and services to our children. Starting earlier is better. Eligibility. ECI serves children from birth to 36 months with a disability or developmental delay. The child must meet one of the following criteria. They must have a medically diagnosed condition, an auditory or visual impairment, or a developmental delay. If you or your child's doctor or anyone else who knows your child suspects your child may have a disability or developmental delay, you may request ECI services. You do not need a doctor's referral to access ECI services. You may request services by contacting your local ECI provider, and you can find your local ECI provider by using the Texas Health and Human Services Commission locator tool, and I provided the link below. In the Valley, we have Region 1, and we have Easter Seals as our ECI providers, and then from there, we also have our Head Starts. Just because it says that we need a doctor's diagnosis doesn't mean that we need to have the referral right then in hand. ECI also provides a group of evaluators that will provide an evaluation to evaluate your child in case you suspect a disability is present. Let's say that your child is attending Head Start and the teacher does notice there are some concerns. As a teacher, we are not evaluators, we are not doctors, but we are educators, and we could go ahead and let our parents know, Mom, Dad, you know what, I see a little bit of a speech delay, or I see a little difficulty with the sight, hearing, there may be some behavior concerns. And so these are little things that your teacher, your educators could point out to our parents. And then from there, start the process of the evaluations. Evaluations are also free of charge. To find out if they are eligible for services, the child will be evaluated upon referral. This assessment will identify the child's needs, the family's concerns, the child's functional abilities and strengths, and the family's resources and priorities. There is a difference when it comes to ECI and our special education or 504 in these school districts for our kids 4 and up. For our kiddos with 0 to 36 months up to right underneath the 4 years old, those evaluations are done differently. They're done in an ECI setting. We also have a difference between the planning. When our kids enter the school age areas between 4 and above to 23, we have what's called an IEP, an individualized education plan. As you can see here in this evaluation, it's not only the child's needs or the family's concerns, but we also look into the functional abilities, the family's resources and priorities, because when it comes to ECI, we actually have a family plan, not just an individualized plan. And we'll get into that right now. Individualized family service plan is similar to an IEP that our older students have. The difference here is that it is a family-based plan, also having to do with the child's age, because we are between 0 to 3 years old. These evaluations will be completed. After the evaluations are completed, and will act as the roadmap for the services you will receive. The IFSP, also known as the Individualized Family Service Plan, contains a statement of the child's levels of development, family resources, measurable results or outcomes expected, and the procedures and timelines used to determine progress, specific ECI services needed for the child. This will be the therapies or any additional supports and services that that individual may need, natural environments in which services will be provided. Some of our ECI students go to a Head Start. Some of them are receiving services at home. Some of them are receiving services at daycare, which can all be provided in any of those environments. There's another difference. Dates for initiation of services and anticipated length. Steps to be taken to support transition to preschool or other services forward on. Natural environments. When we talk about natural environments, ECI services are delivered in the child's natural environments to the maximum extent possible. Natural environment means settings that are natural or typical for a same-aged infant or toddler without a disability. This may include the home or a community setting. Like I said before, some of our kids are already included in a daycare. They're already attending a Head Start. Some of them may be at home, and this is why we provide all of these services and evaluations in their natural environments. That's another big difference between our school-age students between 4 and 23, is that when we review those evaluations and those plannings, we typically say it is best done in these school environments. ECI, paying for services. You will not need to pay for ECI services if your child is enrolled in Medicaid or CHIP, or if your income is below 100% of the federal poverty level. If not, your family may pay cost share or have services billed to private insurance. However, no family will be turned away for the inability to pay. The final overview for ECI. You must be available, and ECI must be available in every county in Texas. There is no wait list. The IFSP must outline services and help families learn how to help their child. This means connecting them with any outside resources, Region 1, Easter Seals, you name it, anything that we have outside in the community to be able to provide support for our families and the individual with the disabilities. This should be included in their plan and discussed in these meetings. Services must take place in familiar places like the home and a child care center. Private insurance and family fees help with funding, but are not, and no one will be turned away due to the inability to pay. So everybody has the ability to apply. Sometimes if our income is above the minimum requirement, we might have a copay. From what I've heard from families, that copay is not terrible. And the amount of services that are provided through our ECI providers is amazing. I have talked to local communities and local families. I've heard the difference between families who have gotten ECI providers involved in their child's lives as early as possible. And then unfortunately, I've spoken to those parents that did not know about ECI. And so they entered pre-K and kinder without any services, their initial evaluations, because they were not aware that ECI existed or provided free supports and services for our families, including free evaluations. But again, this is what we're here for. This is what we're here to provide this information to our community. For those of you listening, the more that you know, the more that you can provide this information to your vecina, to your neighbor, to your cousin, to the prima, to my sister, to a coworker. The more that we can help each other out, the more that we can help our future. These are our kids. They will one day take care of us. And if we can provide the supports and services as early as possible, you will see the difference in our child's academic, social, community skills, and all around. It also provides a lot of support for our families, our moms and dads, our grandmas, our tias raising our individuals with disabilities sometimes feel like they are left alone. Sometimes they already have a lot of unknown to research with the new disabilities that their child is being diagnosed with. So having ECI providers provide the families and the individual with support provides a huge relief for the parents as well, and the family. Once ECI, so our kiddos from ECI, like I mentioned before, are provided from 0 to 3 years old. Now, that means until they turn 4 years old. None of our kids should be denied ECI services if they are, let's say, 3 months before turning 4 years old. They should still qualify for ECI services if needed until they turn the age of 4. After the 3rd birthday, a child is no longer eligible for Part C transition. Transition is the comprehensive planning and the process of preparing a family and toddler for exiting Part C services. When the planning starts, depends on when the child started receiving ECI services. So huge correction, I apologize, that was my mistake. 3 years old, 0 to 3 years old. And so once the child has turned 3 years old, that doesn't mean that the child is left without any supports or services. That just means that we are in the transition period of our students turning from 3 to 4 years old, exiting the Head Start or home or daycare, and transitioning into the preschool grade level. And so that would be 3 and above. Some of our kids start at 3, some of our kids go into school at 4 years old. Either way, ECI is provided to our kids from 0 to 3 years old. Again, let me make a correction with that. So if your child is 2.5 years old and he's got 6 months before turning to 3, you can still apply for ECI services. Just because it is something new that you just found out today, my child is going to be only 6 months left before they turn 3, I would still contact ECI, sign up for the services and apply so that we could get those services in place before that child does enter into the transition period. Even if it's 2 months before, 1 month before, I would still contact your ECI provider to see how they can help you and start that process. And so when we start the transition, it is much easier for your students. We'll continue with transition to special education. I hope I'm not going too fast for anyone here. So transition to special education. We have a transition meeting. The dates of the meeting will depend on when the child began receiving ECI services. At this meeting, you and the ECI provider will develop a transition plan and incorporate it into the IEP. This is that individualized education plan I was letting you all know about. If you want your child to be evaluated for special education services, you must inform your ECI provider at this meeting so that the ECI provider therefore can do their process and provide all the documentation over to the district that is going to pertain to your child. And that way they provide that documentation and that referral from the ECI provider to the special education director directly. transition conference. If you have consented to the ECI program, notifying your local school of your child's potential eligibility for special education. A school representative will be present at this conference to explain the special education process to you. And so it's always best, although we know that our ECI providers are amazing and they do such a wonderful job, and we know that their process is to provide the documentation from the ECI documentation and provide it over to the new district that the child will be attending. It is always good for our parents to start getting involved. And so what I let my parents know is find out what district your child will be attending, find out what elementary your child will be attending. Once we know that, I go onto the online Google search and I look up your district. Let's say, for example, Edinburgh ISD. I'll look up Edinburgh ISD. I will look for the special education director. I will look for the superintendent when it has to do with the district. Then I go and I look into the website for my child's school, elementary school that's going to pertain. Most of our schools in the district are really good about putting email addresses. And so you'll find your principal's email address, assistant principal email address, and the special education teacher on campus. I usually try to send it to as many people as I can possibly. This way, everybody knows that my child is coming into their district with a plan already, that my child has already been diagnosed with a disability. Or if these are the initials, this will be where you'll be requesting your special education evaluation. But this way, everyone is connected in that email. And if you do have ECI services, I would include your ECI provider representative in that email. And that way we get those transition conferences going. These transition conferences are best if everyone is present. And who do I mean by that? Parents, of course. And then we also want your ECI provider and educators, if they did have some, or therapists at that meeting, along with your new directors of special education and the new campus principal and special education teacher. And this way, any plan that was previously put for your son or daughter is being reviewed by the new campus. And if new evaluations need to be requested, such as special education evaluations or specific or additional evaluations, autism evaluations, we have sensory evaluations, any additional evaluations, functional behavior assessments, other assessments that are normally not included in your full initial evaluation, then this way we already put it all in an email and we get that started as soon as possible. We'd rather our students already have a plan in place when August starts than to be meeting and waiting till August or September. And then our student is sitting in class, pre-K, kinder, and they're sitting there for the whole month of August or September while we're waiting to do a conference transition meeting. Normally, if that happens, our student is left without any supports and services or just the bare minimum. And so this is why I suggest my parents to start the ball rolling, request these transition conferences as early as of this year in May. And that way, when August comes around, we already have that scheduled meeting in line and on the calendar so that we have these discussions before any, for example, behavior concerns start arising on school campus and the teachers start sending our kids home because there's behavior concerns and there was no behavior intervention plan in place. This way, if we follow the transition plan from ECI providers, then we know what all the providers were providing with our students. We know our students' strengths, we know our students' weaknesses, we know their goals and objectives. And then from there, we're starting a new plan in pre-K 3, not just starting without anything. I know that was a whole lot. I hope everybody's okay so far. Transition meeting, the meeting to plan and document appropriate steps and transition services. In the IFSP, it must be conducted not fewer than 90 days and at the discretion of all parties, not more than 9 months before the child's 3rd birthday. If the child is referred and determined to be eligible more than 45 but less than 90 days before the child's 3rd birthday, appropriate steps and transition services must be included in the child's initial IFSP. If the child is referred fewer than 45 days before the child's 3rd birthday, the IFSP team is not required to plan steps and transition services. If the child is potentially eligible for preschool special education services, the contractor must, with written potential consent, refer the child directly to the LEA as soon as possible. And so, yes, it does say the 45 days before, but again, if we read that last paragraph, it doesn't say that we don't have any responsibility. And so even if we request these fewer than 45 days before the child turns 3, the ECI provider still has a responsibility to provide that eligibility and those parent consents over to the district that is going to be providing our child with the educational services so that we can start those special education evaluations. The sooner the better. You will be getting a copy of this PowerPoint as well, everyone in attendance, in case I'm going too fast for y'all. I know it's a lot of information all jammed up in 1 hour. School notifications. Your IFSP team determines if a 2-year-old receiving early childhood intervention services is potentially eligible for preschool special education services. For a child whose parent has not opted out of the disclosure, you must notify the LEA at least 90 days before the child's 3rd birthday that the child is potentially eligible for preschool special education services. And this is where I would let everyone know that it is always best to provide it via email. In an email, we cannot deny or say that we never received it. It is always a confirmed document. If the child began receiving services fewer than 90 days and more than 45 days before their 3rd birthday, you must provide notification to the LEA as soon as possible, unless the parent opts out. If you receive a referral for a child fewer than 45 days before the child's 3rd birthday, and the child may be potentially eligible for preschool special education services, you must, with written parental consent, refer the child directly to the LEA. And that's your local education agency. I apologize. That is what LEA abbreviation means. Local education agency. That would be the district that pertains to your son or daughter or to the student. Transition conference. The parent should be given information about special education eligibility, timelines, process for consenting to an evaluation, and eligibility determination and extended year services. Overview of steps. The referral, either by ECI or the parent, the notice of rights and consent of service, the full and individualized initial evaluation, the ARD meeting, the IEP, and after the meeting. ARD is admission review and dismissal. That is an abbreviation for the ARD meetings when our students are receiving special education. We actually have some new correction on that. I don't believe we'll be calling them ARD meetings anymore. That is just something new that came out a couple of weeks ago, but I'll let you all know what we'll be calling those wonderful fun meetings now. Special education evaluations. Once the ECI program has provided notice to the local school, they must contact you and have you sign an evaluation consent form so that the evaluations can begin. Evaluations cannot start unless we've signed the evaluation consent, parents, and it must be signed and dated. If you are not receiving ECI services and your child is 3 or older, you should email your local school's principal and ask for evaluations of your child. The school must respond to your request within 15 days. And so remember, parents and community providers, send an email requesting an evaluation consent. Even if you are receiving ECI, I would just double it up and send in my own email just to make sure that everybody's receiving it again. If our ECI provider has sent it in, it just means that the district now has both of us, and they know that we know that services must start and evaluations must be conducted. The school does have 15 days to let the parent know whether they agree to this evaluation or not. Sometimes they will let you know that they don't agree to the evaluation, but there is a process to proceed if that were to happen. Special education evaluations. Upon obtaining your consent for evaluation, once you sign and date, starting from the date that you signed, the school has 45 days to complete that evaluation. 45 school calendar days, not weekends, not schools, not days that are off. and not summertime as well, unless our students are attending summer school. Reason being is because we do ask for these evaluations to be done in their educational setting as much as possible so that the validity of those evaluation results are the closest and accurate to the educational setting. The evaluation they must complete is called a full and individualized initial evaluation. This is the initial evaluation for our students as young as 3 or 4, just starting school and needing the initial evaluation. Sometimes if we do have students that are older and have never been evaluated before, we will request a full and individualized initial evaluation. This covers everything. The FIIE is a set of activities, not a single test, because it must cover all areas of disabilities. The evaluation will determine if your child has a disability and will identify needs for special education and related services. The evaluation must be carried out in the language that would best result in accurate information. And so for our second language learners, if it is best to be given in Spanish, then that is the native language that we must give that evaluation so that those results are as accurate as possible. Once the FIIE has been completed, the school must schedule an annual review and dismissal ARD meeting within 30 calendar days to review the evaluation results and to determine the eligibility. Parent must be notified 5 school days before the meeting. And so on this one, if parents do have their own doctor's recommendations with the child's diagnosis, you may provide those at your time of requesting evaluations. Those are always beneficial. That way the evaluators have additional information that they can review along with all of their data, all of their observations and their evaluations that they conduct. So remember, it's 45 days to conduct the evaluation. You add another 30 days that the school has to present those evaluations to our parents. And these ARD meetings must be notified to parents 5 days prior to the ARD. A lot of the times I hear my mom is telling me, Ms. De La Cruz, I have an ARD tomorrow. They just called me today. If parent has availability and parent is able to go and they don't mind, feel free to go. But sometimes our parents want to review these documents before going into ARD, especially if it's an initial evaluation. You're going to be going into this ARD for the first time with a full initial evaluation, being told the disabilities and being told the supports and services that your child may need in school. And so this sometimes would require a little bit more time to review all those documents, know exactly what's going on so that you can be a productive member of that ARD committee. And so if needed, parents, you may request any and all copies of evaluations and draft IEPs to be provided to you before this ARD meeting. That is why it's perfect when we follow the law and provide our parents with a 5-day notice so that parents can then request those documents being provided. Sometimes the schools will let you know, Miss or Sir, it is not the final document, it is a draft document. Let them know, okay, put a big old stamp it draft or write it in big red letters, but I would like a copy of my documents before I go into ARD. Special education eligibility. So these are some of the diagnoses that are eligible for special education, which are orthopedic impairment, are OHIs, ADD, ADHD, auditory impairment, visual impairment, deaf, blindness, intellectual disabilities, emotional disturbance, learning disabilities, speech impairment, autism, multiple disabilities, traumatic brain injury, non-eligible. If the ARD committee determines a child is not eligible, they may be eligible for special education services under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And so Section 504 is another form of support that are provided to our students. The difference between special education and Section 504 is that under special education, our students are protected under a bigger umbrella of laws and protections. Under Section 504, our kids are only receiving modifications and accommodations, meaning in Section 504, all of our kids are not receiving speech therapy, occupational therapy, all of that, they are just receiving modifications and accommodations in the classroom. Let's just say extra time, larger print. Some of our students don't need a lot of supports and services, so Section 504 might be the perfect fit for them. But if our students need more supports, if they need therapies, if they're needing specialized counseling, not by the academic counselor, but by our special education counselor, for example, for our kids with autism, we want our students under the autism spectrum to be receiving special education counseling, because this helps with the talk therapy, social therapy, communication process, emotional processing. And so as much as we love our academic counselors are there to provide academic counseling. Our special education counselors are there to provide special education counseling, which is a lot more and specialized than our academic. If we're receiving special education counseling, our students should be receiving special education services, not Section 504. If your child is under Section 504 and is needing a lot more than just the basic accommodations and modifications, I would request a special education evaluation in full to determine if our child qualifies for special education. Therefore, we can provide the appropriate and specific supports and services that they need. Special education eligibility. The evaluation determines if your child meets special education disability criteria. The ART committee determines if your child is eligible for special education. But remember, parents, you are also part of this ART committee. Can I disagree with the evaluations? I have a lot of parents letting me know I don't agree with the evaluations. Why is it that my outside doctors are giving my child a diagnosis of autism, yet the school is giving them a non-categorical, is usually what we'll see with our little ones of 3 years old. You can disagree with the evaluation, parents. You disagree with the evaluations, we ask the school to reevaluate. If we do not want the school to reevaluate and we want our own outside evaluations, we can request what are called independent evaluations outside of the community, done by an outside evaluator that has nothing to do with the school district. The only difference here, the but here, would be that we do have to allow the school to perform their own evaluation first. Once they have done their evaluation and then the parent disagrees, that is when we can request that independent eval. If you think that the school's evaluation does not accurately measure to your child's need for special education, you may get an independent education evaluation at your own expense and or request an independent evaluation at the school's expense. And so this right here, I'd like to make, so we can bring, like I mentioned before, recommendations from our own doctors into the ART table, into the ART committee, and ask them to take them into consideration. Sometimes they will. And sometimes just with your doctor's recommendations, they will add that diagnosis if they agree, and they will add the supports and services as an ART committee that are needed for your son or daughter. Sometimes they will disagree with your outside diagnosis, private provider, pediatrician. And so this is when they conduct their own, their full initial evaluation. Once those come out and parent is in disagreement to this, you can request the district to conduct an IEE, an independent education evaluation, and the district should pay for this evaluation. There are criteria. For example, some districts may put that this evaluator must be a certain distance from the district, that the fee may be a reasonable fee. What reasonable is, I'm not too sure. I tell my parents, let's submit the fee and wait for the school to agree or disagree. And then of course they look at the evaluator's criteria, education, their background. They do a background check because that evaluator will be coming onto campus to evaluate your son or daughter. Again, we'd like these evaluations to be done in their education setting so that they're the most appropriate and specific to your child's school needs. You should notify school officials in writing if you want an independent evaluation and you expect the school to pay for it. Although the school can ask you, you do not have to tell the district why you disagree with their evaluation. This evaluation will be conducted by a qualified person who is not employed by the school. Sometimes schools will also give you a list of evaluators that don't work for them, but that maybe other parents have used. And so you can use that list, or you can use your outside resources. to locate those independent evaluators in the community. Your annual review and dismissal meeting. This is the ARD meeting that I was letting you all know about. Some of you may be in to them if you have older children. Some of you with the little ones from 0 to 3, you have not attended the amazing ARD meetings that are wonderful. But you will soon attend one when you do your transition from the ECI program into the educational setting. And so the ARD meetings are conducted at least once a year to develop and review and revise the child's individualized education plan. You are a member of your child's ARD committee. You may request an ARD meeting at any time. So although the schools have a requirement to conduct one annual ARD a year, usually they'll start doing them right around this time, parents. They wait till the very last minute to do them. And so they try to do them all at the end of the year. Some districts I've noticed will do them at the beginning of the year, and they'll do kind of like a transition staffing meeting along with their annual ARD at the beginning of the school and review the student's educational plan with their past teachers and the current new teachers. In this ARD meeting, we review the child's individual education plan, we review their class schedule, we review their goals and objectives, we review their PLAFs, we review whatever and all supports and services that the student may be receiving, how many times they'll be receiving it, how many minutes. We'll go over accommodations, modifications. If the student does have a functional behavior assessment followed by a behavior intervention plan, we will be reviewing that behavior intervention plan with everyone at the ARD table. Annual review and dismissal meeting. At the initial meeting, the ARD committee will review the FIIE and determine 2 services: special education, specially designed instruction, related services, services necessary for a child to receive special education. Services are recorded in the IEP. And so what this means is specially designed instruction. And so if the child is receiving special education in the general education services classroom, then we have, okay, my child is in the general ed classes for reading, math, and writing. And for 30 minutes, he has in-class support, and a teacher from special education will come into the classroom and provide in-class support to my child. Or my child will be pulled out for a resource and be provided that educational academic support in a different class setting other than general ed. Some of our students are placed maybe in a life skills unit that should be determined and also clarified to the parent as far as why that setting was chosen and why our student is in a restrictive environment rather than a least restrictive environment, and what specialty services that they'd be receiving in that classroom rather than the general education classroom. And usually what I'll ask the ARD committee is, I'll ask them to explain to us, what are the services that my student is getting that are different and cannot receive in the general education classroom for you to be recommending a life skills unit? And then we wait and see what their answers are. If it is nothing that cannot be provided in the general education classroom, our students should be placed in the general education classroom with the appropriate supports and services throughout the day. Now, there are some students that need the life skills unit, behavior unit, self-contained unit. There are many names for them here in the Valley, clear across the districts. And so that will be talked about and clarified and explained to parents in an ARD meeting, reviewing the individualized education plan, but we will also go over entire minutes as far as per day. How many minutes will my child be in the life skills unit? How many minutes will my child be in the general education? Will my child have the opportunities to be around general education students, not just special education students? How many therapies will they be receiving? How often will those therapists come onto campus? Where are those therapies being presented? And then, of course, we go over down as far as the goals and objectives. What additional other than the, let's say, pre-K TEACs that my teachers are normally working on, which means they have all these standards that they need to cover, all these educational and reading, math, writing, science, social studies, art, PE, you name it. They all have it. Music, your fine arts, they all have TEACs. And so with these TEACs, we know that our teachers have to follow a curriculum and teach our students a certain area of their curriculum. But in addition to that, we want goals and objectives. If our child is struggling, if our child is learning a certain goal and objective differently, then we want those goals and objectives to be listed. We want to know, how long are we giving this child these goals? What is the objective for this goal? And then we break them down. Instead of putting our goals and objectives for the entire 36, 36 months? No, 36 weeks of school. I'd like to scaffold them. And so this way we can put 36, 12, 8, of course, always depending on the need of the student. Goals and objectives along with their IEP within should always be appropriate and specific to your child and no one else. No one else, just your child. With the understanding that my child is learning the pre-K3 curriculum, is learning the kinder curriculum, whatever grade level they may be in. But in addition to that, we're working on these extra supports and services. The IEP answers two main questions. What does the child need to learn or do academically? And what supports and related services does the child need to make educational progress? Individualized education plan. Some of the components of an IEP would be your present levels of academic and functional performance. These are the PLAFs. And so this will give us the current academic levels and functional performance for our students. We also want measurable annual goals and objectives to be put in a student's IEP. If our student has counseling, then we want counseling goals. If our student has speech goals, occupational, physical. If there are behavior goals, then we want those to be added onto the goals and objectives. If our student is going to counseling, then we want the counseling goals to be added to the goals and objective setting. Least restrictive environment considerations. This is where we want to know, where is our student being educated? Are they being educated in the general education? Are they being educated in a more restrictive setting? And if so, what are the opportunities for our students to get with the general education peers? And so we want the most opportunities our student can get with his educational peers. Accommodations, modifications, and services. There are differences between accommodations and there are differences between modifications. Frequency, duration, and location of services. This is where I was letting you know as far as speech, occupational, physical, counseling, all of that. Transition services. If our students, when our students have autism, normally we discuss transition services every year with our students on the spectrum. We also discuss transition services when our students are turning the age of 14. And so all of our students turning the age of 14, we must start talking transition services, vocational goals, applications. What are we going to do? What are we looking at for in the future? And so we want to start connecting our students that are 14 and up with Texas Workforce and getting them a VR counselor so that that VR counselor can start connecting him or her and the family with any outside community resources, but also help them academically and help them with those academic goals. Reporting progress, we must be receiving a progress report, parents. Now, this is not your normal progress reports with the your 80s, 70s, numbers listed from A to Z. No, a progress report is on your annual goals and objectives. Now, just because they're called annual goals and objectives doesn't mean we don't look at them until once a year. No, we're looking at this as often as the progress reports state. And so under your goals and objectives of the IEP plan, we will put on there how frequency parent wants these and how frequency the ART committee agreed to. And so I have some parents say, you know what, I want my progress report every 3 weeks. And I have some of them say, you know what, I just want them every 6 weeks so they can come with the report card. The difference between these progress reports, parents, is that they are detailed. So let's say you have goal number 1 is reading. And so we want to know, where are we on goal number 1, reading? How are we achieving it? What are we lacking? And what are we going to do to get to that goal? And if we got to revamp it, or if we've met our goal, then we mastered it and put in another goal. But you should be receiving these as often as you've agreed with your ART committee to receive, whether it's every 3 weeks or every 6 weeks, but it is a detailed progress report coming from your special education teacher. The participation in state and district assessments. We go over whether our students in the special education or section 504 will be taking the regular STAR, STAR Alt, or there are also accommodations and modifications to these state and district assessments. Related services, types of related services that our students could be receiving in school are assistive technology, speech, physical, occupational therapy, psychological services, social work, counseling, special transportation, audiology services, orientation and mobility training, rehabilitation counseling, school nursing services and school health services, interpreter services. And so another one I would like to add here is if when we're looking at our audiology, our deaf and mute community, I want to make sure that our parents know to be requesting an ASL evaluation, which is totally separate than the normal evaluations that they do. We want to make sure that they're conducting a formal ASL evaluation so that we know where our students are and where we need to work on that ASL or total communication. And so these are little evaluations that I've noticed that are left out, or they're done just as a screening and not a formal. And so these are other evaluations that I always recommend parents to request, along with your functional behavior assessment, so that we can put a behavior intervention plan in place. The ARD meeting. Once the IEP is written, the parent and administrator sign the IEP form, either in agreement or disagreement. A parent should not sign agree if you do not find the terms of the IEP acceptable. If a parent or the adult student disagrees with one or more requirement elements of the IEP, the district must offer a recess of no more than 10 days, school days. And so anytime we disagree on anything on the IEP and the ARD committee is not in agreement to what parent is asking or requesting, then we go ahead and sign disagree, and the school has 10 or less days to reconvene ARD. We give them the time to go back and review whatever parents have presented to them, so that hopefully they can come back with new recommendations. Or it also allows the parent to take these 10 days to review everything that they have, so they can come back with more supporting information to support what they're asking for. ARD meeting rights. Ask for the ARD meeting agenda before the meeting. All notices must be in parents' native language and have the right to an interpreter at the meeting. Parents may bring anyone they wish to the ARD meeting. School must attempt to schedule the meeting at a time and place agreeable to the parent and the school. This is where those 5 days of notice help, because it works with everyone's schedule. Of course, we want to have consideration for the school, but we also want to have consideration for mom and dad and their work schedule and their pickup schedules. With regards to everything being in their native language, documents and IEPs and evaluation should be in a parent's native language. Sometimes we do have trouble translating those documents, but this is why we let the ARD committee know ahead of time. Hey, I'm a Spanish speaker. Hey, I need it in Mandarin. Hey, I speak this other language. And so by law, they should be translating these documents into your native language. And if needed, an interpreter should be provided to you at these ARDs. Parents, feel free to request a formal interpreter that the school has to pay for. Don't just take anyone at the ARD committee table to translate these evaluations to you. It just might be a Spanish speaker like me. I was born here in the Valley. I speak Tex-Mex. Although I can get through and my parents love my Spanish, it is not the appropriate and academic language to be able to translate an evaluation. And so I would not be able to appropriately translate that evaluation to you. And so parents, if someone is at the table and they're trying their best to interpret, but you are still not understanding, kindly thank them and say, thank you so much for trying. But ARD committee, we are going to have to reschedule, and I need you to provide me a formal interpreter in my language, because I need to understand what you're recommending to me, what you're telling me my child has for the first time and should need for their academic school supports. And so do not feel shy to ask for that and to ask for a continuation in your meeting, parents. You have the right to do so. The same goes with your documents. If you go in the ARD meeting and you have an interpreter, but the documents are still in English and you're one of those learners that has to be seeing it and hearing it, ask to reconvene and ask for your documents to be translated in your native language. The process is we request evaluations. We look at the eligibility, we look at present levels, we look at goals and objectives, we look at the services and the supports being provided and recommended. And we also look at the least restrictive environment. The law states that all special education students services be implemented in the least restrictive environment, which means to the maximum extent appropriate. Children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are non-disabled. And special classes, separate schooling, or other removals of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment occurs only if the nature or severity of the disability is such that the education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Parents, this is one that I know a lot of my parents have concerns about, especially when our little ones are exiting the ECI, transitioning into the pre-K or kinder. A lot of our districts want to put our kiddos into a self-contained room, and our parents are in disagreement to this. There are 4 questions in our idea manual that you can ask your ARD committee in ARD. And if they answer no or yes, you can determine whether your child should be placed right back into that general education classroom. Remember what I mentioned earlier, only if we cannot provide a service or supplemental aid in that general ed classroom should we consider that removal. But even then, we need to look at the reasonings why and what type of curriculum is being placed in that different environment rather than the general education setting. At the end of the day, we also want the most opportunities for any and all of our students to be around the general education peers. And so although your child may be placed in a life skills behavior unit, self-contained unit for their core classes, make sure that we're advocating so that our students are in fine arts and PE and in lunge with their general education peers, because we know that we learn from others. The school has an obligation to provide a free, appropriate public education. I know I'm running kind of close to time, but I want to go over this. This is very important, parents, community providers, service providers, is that our schools have this obligation. Most of the time, our schools are providing the free and the public education, but we need to make sure that it is appropriate. And this is where all those evaluations, the ECI supports and services, the new FIE evaluations, the new IEP comes in place. It needs to be appropriate and specific to our child, to our son or daughter with a disability, to no one else. We want them educated just like everybody else, but they do have a individualized education plan that is different than anybody else. And so that IEP is so important. It is like a lesson plan that states what supports, what services, what accommodations, where your child's going to be. Yes, we review these every year, but that's how important they are, the goals and objectives. And so we want to make sure that our students are receiving that free, appropriate public education. They are provided at a public expense, meets the standards of the Texas Education Agency, includes an appropriate education, is provided with the IEP, is being taught in the least restrictive environment, and for children 3 to 22 years of age who have an eligible disability and have an educational need for special education and related services. For an education to be considered appropriate, the child must make educational progress. And this is where those progress reports come in handy, along with the goals and objectives. We're always making sure, what are we working on? Where are we at? Are we improving? Are we mastering? Are we regressing? And if we're regressing, should we look at year-round services? Year-round services is not like summer school. Year-round services are services provided throughout the entire year. And so there is a huge difference. And these are all different aspects that we need to look at, that our students with disabilities may differ than our neurotypical students without an IEP plan. Accommodations versus modifications. Let's go over this. I know we're running out of time, but this is one of the areas where we get a little confused. And so accommodations are the how. Are we adjustments made in how a student with a disability is taught or tested? Accommodations do not change what the student is taught or what he is expected to know. Common examples of accommodations are highlighted textbooks, extension of time for a student who writes slowly or sits closer to the teacher. It could also be giving my student a copy of the notes every day before he or she leaves class. Still hold them accountable to writing notes, but hey, teacher, I need you to give my child a copy of the notes that you just took down and give them to my child because my child has dyslexia. And when my child gets home, sometimes she doesn't write down all the correct notes. And so I like her to compare her notes side by side so she has the appropriate notes to study for her exam the next day. Just a little example. Modifications are what? So that's unlike accommodations. They change the level of instruction provided or tested. Modifications create a different standard for the student receiving them. The most common modifications are those made to the general education curriculum for a student with a cognitive disability. Curriculum modifications should be in the student's IEP. Let's just say, for example, modifications in a spelling test. All the rest of my students are testing on 10 spelling words, but you know what? My student has anxiety and she's going to stress out with 10. So I'm going to give her 8. She has 8 instead of 10. My child has multiple choice questions instead of giving them 4 because visually they cannot see the 4. Instead of giving them 4 options, I'll give them 2 options. Accommodations could be, I will give my student instead of 1 day for this written essay, my student has all week until Friday for this written essay. And accommodations, some students might want the important words highlighted to be able to visually see them. I'll highlight those for them. Let's see. Extended school year services. This is where there's a difference between that. Sometimes we hear extended school year services and my parents think, is that like summer school? Well, ECI refers to education services provided in the summer or over a holiday break to some students with disabilities who require them as part of their free appropriate public education. ESY services are to be provided in accordance with the IEP and are at no cost to the parent. Many schools require documentation or proof of an extended regroupment time in order for students to receive ECY services. What I've been noticing lately is school districts want to see if there's a regression or the need for why are these services needed for extended school year services. Again, we can ask the art committee to provide these. They have to take them into consideration, but they don't have to give us a yes. They can tell us a no, but if we hear a no, there is a process to consider with that, and we can disagree with them and then come back for a reconvene art, provide some more supportive information as far as why my student would benefit and why they need the ESY. I have some parents get doctor's recommendations. I have some parents look at the progress reports and compare, and they notice that there has been no progress, or maybe there was a lack of progress, or maybe there was a regression. And this is what they take into the art committee and they present to them to request the ESY. Procedural safeguards should always be given to you. Procedural safeguards are the written notice of procedural safeguards, prior written notice of school's decision, access to certain meetings, access to student records, and the due process hearing. Again, parents, if you want to request all of your records that are going to be presented in this art or evaluations, you may do so. I always suggest you do them by email. If you request it by email, the districts will more than likely provide them to you. If we request them verbally, we know that our educators get busy, they turn the hallway and something else happens, an accident, and they might forget to provide those records to you. If you shoot them an email, it's right there waiting for them in their inbox so they can provide you any and all documents. If you want, I always do, I add on there, please provide all draft documents. That way they know, I know they're draft. It's not the last document. It's still being created in the art committee. Ms. Stephanie, I know it's 1:17. Do you want me to keep on going?
Thank you. We're nearing the end, so go ahead and keep on going.
You got it. Special education tips. So document everything in writing. Remember, everything in writing. Send it by email. It's the easiest thing to do. It is documented. If the school decides to respond, we have their response in written format. If they choose not to, we have Jiminy Crickets and no response from the school. For example, if you request an evaluation, and they go past the 15 days, then you have it there when you requested your initial evaluation and when not you got that response back. You and your child are the most important ARD committee members, parents. Just because you may not be your child's teacher, your child's therapist, your child's principal or evaluators, you are a part of this ARD committee. You know what your child needs, you know your child best and more than anybody else. Feel free to speak up, parents. Do it. This is your time to do it at an ARD committee table. You need to speak about any and all concerns or supports and services that your child may need to be successful in school. Make sure you're voicing your concerns along with your child's strengths and abilities. You may record ARD meetings, notify the school in advance as a courtesy. So we must notify the ARD committee parents. We cannot just go in there and start recording. We must let them know at the beginning, may we record this message? They cannot deny it. They'll just take a little longer because normally they'll want to get their own device to record, and then you can record from yours as well. If you don't have your own device, you can have the school record, and then you can request a copy of that recording at the end of the meeting or via email. Invite people who you know or have worked with the child to the ARD meeting. We have a joke. We always used to say, si quieres, te llevas la vecina. You can take the neighbor if you want. You can take anybody you want to ARD. But remember, we always want to take people that are able to input about our child's disability, about our child's supports and services, what works, what doesn't. If we have a BCBA outside of campus that has been working with our child, invite them to your ARD meetings. They are wonderful. I mean, they're just amazing. They make our ARD meetings and our bibs go by so much better. And the input they have is amazing. If you have therapists willing to go with you, anybody that has any input in your child's educational planning, invite them with you. You do have to let the school know ahead of time. Sometimes what happens if you don't let them know ahead of time, they may cancel and reschedule on you that day. For example, if you're taking an attorney, you do need to let them know ahead of time because the district needs to have their legal in person as well. But if it's anybody else, an advocate like myself, you should still let them know. It's just the nice thing to do. And that way everybody's, clear and aware of it and the ARD can continue. Make a list of your child's strengths and abilities, your concerns, and any other things you would like to discuss at the ARD and take it with you. We don't only want to discuss what our child needs to work on, what our child is lacking or needing. We also want to discuss our child's strengths. If we know that our child is good at math, we want to run with that. If we know that our child self-esteem feels so much better when he or she is allowed to read in front of the classroom, let's do that. If our child shies away and their anxiety level raises when being put under pressure in front of the classroom or being called to, let the ARD committee know, let the teachers know. Those are simple things that you can also add to the IEP. Please do not choose my child. Don't raise them. Don't single them out. Things like this might affect our students with disabilities different than any other student. You have a right to understand your child's services. If you are confused about something, ask the ARD committee. If anything in this meeting does not sit well with you, if you still don't understand what's being told, or you still have a little bit of doubt, or you need some more clarification at this ARD meeting, do not agree, parents. Remember, you can ask for a reconvene. They'll reconvene within or less than 10 days. If we need to go past 10 days, we can with the parents' approval. But don't sign agree if you do not feel comfortable. If you need more explanation, further explanation and clarification, then we do this by asking for a reconvene ARD. And within these dates, we can meet with a therapist if we want the therapist to explain what they are recommending. If we want to meet with the ARD committee to discuss why that setting was recommended or why the academic or the goals and objectives, then we have this time to do so that we can feel free when we go back to ARD to sign agree or disagree. Never sign agree or disagree because you're being pressured. And we can go over a little recap, educating and advocating through the years. So 0 to 3 is our ECI, all children age 0 to 3 who have a medical condition, developmental delay, or a hearing visual impairment. 3 to 21, special education, students age 3 to 21 through the year, or I always say through 22, with one of the 13 disabilities listed in the IDEA, need special education and related services as a result of that disability. Our students 18 plus can stay on campus up to the age of 22 if they choose to. And if they need to, we go over functional, vocational, Texas workforce goes in there. We expose them to careers, community involvement, community opportunities, and resources. If your student has a disability and is 18 plus and chooses to stay in school, he or she has the right to do so, parents. If the school's denying you, please let us know and we can help you with that. 14 plus, this is that transitioning plan, special education transition planning. IEP must include appropriate measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to training, education, employment, independent living skills, and where appropriate. So there's a vocational evaluation that we can request Texas Workforce to conduct, and we can request that as early as 14. And so that way we get the transition plan rolling. 18 plus, special education, transfer of rights at the age of 18, and an ability to remain in school through the year student turns 22. Post-secondary, vocational rehabilitation, supportive decision-making. We at DRTx also have alternative guardianship parents for those of you who have students with disabilities that are turning 18 or are older than 18 and don't have an alternative guardianship. We do perform what's called a supportive decision-making document. We also have other alternative guardianships. We don't do the full guardianship just because in DRTx, we do believe that all individuals with disabilities maintain 100% of their rights. And when we do a full guardianship, that does remove that individual's rights 100%. The supportive decision-making is a wonderful document. It's legal. It was created in Texas. It's amazing. And it provides the same basis. The difference here is that that individual with a disability will always make the final decision of yes or no. The supportive decision-making document only states that I have set my mom, my dad, my wife, my husband, whoever may be, to help me understand, clarify, and explain what is being presented to me in front of me. Not making the decision for me. They're just explaining. Meaning, if I have an individual with a disability that doesn't understand something the first time, but you know what, after running it by them for a week, by Friday, they understand clearly what I explained to them and they can make that decision, they might be beneficial of a supportive decision-making document. There's just many different reasons. You know, at the end of the day, if that individual can make that final decision, they just need the help from somebody to clarify and explain what is being presented. The supportive decision-making document might be the one for them. At DRTx, we service all of the state of Texas. And so we have different teams. I am part of the education team, but because we do provide free services to all individuals with the state of Texas, we had to separate into departments so that we could better service everybody. Every team on here has attorneys and advocates, just like myself. We cover accessibility, community living, education, employment and vocational rehab services, foster care, health care, housing, institutional rights and civil liberties, alternative guardianships such as supportive decision-making, transportation, voting, COVID-19, disaster relief, you name it, we do it. One of the coolest things with the COVID-19 that we did this past COVID that was new to all of us is that we actually trained members of DRTx to become coaches. And so for some of our individuals with disabilities that had a fear and anxiety, they needed a coach to be able to help them get through this process. We had coaches train and go with these individuals and get their first COVID vaccine. They will assign the same individual to go with that individual for their follow-up COVID vaccines. You name it, we'll do it. We also were able to locate providers to go to their house, to their homes, instead of them having to travel outside. Again, my name is Melinda L. Cruz. Thank you so much for allowing me to present to y'all today. I know that we jam-packed a whole lot of information today, all in a little bit over an hour. I know I might have gone a little too fast. I wanted to try to get everything in here for you all. I am always here to serve you. Again, I cover the whole RGV, a little bit of Corpus and Nueces area. But if you have any questions, we cover the whole state of Texas. All of our services are 100% free, parents. We have attorneys and advocates that speak multiple languages. So if it's just not English, we have other advocates and attorneys that can better assist you. Again, all of our services are free. We are here to help you if you have any questions or concerns. If you may have just a question and not too sure if it's something that we can help you with, please feel free to give us a call. The most we can tell you is guide you and direct you into the right resources that you may need, or we take your intake down and you'll have an advocate and attorney helping you and guiding you and your individual with a disability in the right direction. Again, my name is Melinda L. Cruz. I love what I do. I'm very passionate, and the more that I can help in my community, the better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melinda. In the interest of time, since we've gone a little over, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's webinars. If you had some questions, please reach out to us. We are happy to answer any of those questions in the chat box. And if you're joining us on Facebook, in the comments is the link to Disability Rights Texas website as well. And so please reach out to us with any questions that you have. I'm going to go ahead and stop here, share Melinda, and share my screen one final time, and we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And so once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank you again, Melinda. Such fantastic information that you've provided to our families. We really appreciate it so very much. Just as a reminder, we are recording today's webinar, and the recording will be available on our Facebook page as well as on our website at prntexas.org. And if you're needing a certificate of attendance, you will be receiving an email to thank you for attending today's webinar. If you follow the link in that email, you can get your certificate of attendance. We do have a couple of upcoming events I want to make you aware of. Coming up on May 2nd at 12:15 p.m. Central Time, we've got a webinar on one-page descriptions, valuable information they will remember. And that is with Laura Buckner from the University of Texas. And then also coming up on June 13th, also at 12:15, we've got Stephen Alamont from Disability Rights Texas coming to join us to do a review of the special education issues that are currently before the 88th Texas Legislature. So you're going to want to make sure you attend these and learn all of that information. And then on the screen right now is the contact information for our Director of Statewide Services, Christina, our support specialist, Chelsea, and myself. Please check out our website, prntexas.org, for information on upcoming webinars and events in your local area, as well as lots of information for parents. And like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at PRN Texas. Again, thank you so much, Melinda. Fantastic information. We really appreciate your time. And we appreciate all of you for joining us today. Please let us know if you have any questions and if there's anything we can do to help you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. I provided my email address. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me. Thank you, ladies, for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Melinda. We really appreciate it so much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.